Hey heroes, and welcome to another Canadian episode of History of the Marvel Universe. This channel is sponsored in part by Patreon supporters. If you would like to contribute and vote in monthly polls that help decide what topics get covered on the channel, then you can sign up for an amount of your choosing over at patreon.com/MaryMarvelate. The link is in the description below, along with other places you can find me. This week we are once again returning to the Great White North and continuing our look at the history of Alpha Flight. But before we jump into the next chapter of this story, let's take a few minutes to remember where we left off. Previously on the history of Alpha Flight, the team's founder, James MacDonald Hudson, aka Guardian, was seemingly killed when his battlesuit's power pack exploded. However, he narrowly survived by sending himself through a space-time rift. He was recovered by members of an alien race called the Quirlin, who saved his life, transforming him into a cyborg in the process. Hudson subsequently returned to Earth but was found and captured by the notorious Roxxon Oil Company. Meanwhile, his wife Heather Hudson took over as the leader of Alpha Flight, donned a similar high-tech battlesuit, and adopted Mac's former codename Vindicator. Thinking her husband dead, Heather slowly grew close with her teammate Madison Jeffries, a mutant mechanic who used a version of the Box armor initially developed by his deceased comrade Roger Box. Meanwhile, Madison's ex-girlfriend Lillian Crawley, better known as the nigh-invulnerable mutant Diamond Lil, re-entered the picture and attempted to get back together with him. As for the other members of the team, the goddess Naria, aka Snowbird, was killed during a conflict with the ghostly villain Pestilence, along with her husband and child, who were allowed to join her when her soul ascended to the realm of the Inuwa gods. Her corporeal form was taken over by the disembodied spirit of her teammate Walter Langowski, aka Sasquatch, whose original body had been destroyed in an earlier incident. This forced him to live as a woman for a time, but Snowbird's spirit later transformed her body into a duplicate of Walter's original masculine form, effectively restoring him to normal. Speaking of restorations, when Eugene Judd, aka Puck, was separated from the spirit of the ancient sorcerer Black Razor, he regained his natural height, but lost his increased longevity, leaving him aged. He was subsequently captured by the demonic Dream Queen, who restored his youth, and while he ultimately escaped from her clutches, the dream stuff she used to repair his body after regular torture sessions began to evaporate, leaving him hospitalized. Making matters worse, Puck was then abducted from the hospital by one of Alpha Flight's oldest enemies, an ancient megalomaniac who unironically called himself the Master of the World. Another member of the team, Jean-Marie Beaubier, aka Aurora, was rendered powerless after a conflict involving Loki and subsequently began training to become a nun, but was drawn back into the fold to save her twin brother, Jean-Paul, aka North Star, retrieving him from the realm of Alfheim. On that mission, Aurora was aided by the team's young trainees, collectively referred to as Beta Flight. There were the mutant sisters, Goblin and Laura Dean, the latter of which could create interdimensional portals, as well as Kara Kilgrave, aka Persuasion, the daughter of the infamous Purple Man who inherited her father's mind control abilities. Previously, Beta Flight also included William Knapp, aka Mannequin, but by this point he had left the group to focus on his medical career. During a subsequent battle with the other dimensional sorcerer Lan, North Star was able to reignite Aurora's mutant powers by returning some of the light energy that she had previously used to heal him, and the mutant siblings contributed greatly to their mystic foe's defeat. Another important alpha in that conflict was Elizabeth Two Young Men, aka Talisman, the daughter of Dr. Michael Two Young Men, aka Shaman, both of whom wielded mystical tools and abilities. During the battle with Lan, the heroes were also aided by a new Gamma Flight, which had been assembled by the Canadian government. That team included the animalistic mutant Kyle Gibney, aka Wild Child, the Chinese-born mutant siblings Silver and Auric, who could project beams of cold and heat respectively, and Witchfire, the daughter of the demonic sorcerer Belasco. This version of Gamma Flight was led by a mysterious new Nemesis, who wielded the Prometheum Soul Sword crafted by her vigilante predecessor. In the wake of Land's defeat, despite his attempts to ruin Alpha Flight's reputation, the Alphans ultimately cleared their names and once again regained their position as Canada's premier superhero team. As such, the Canadian government agreed to once again provide the team with support through the Ministry of Defence's Department H. The Prime Minister also officially disbanded Gamma Flight and intended on reassigning its members to Beta Flight under Alpha's supervision. That news enraged Wild Child, causing him to go on a feral rampage. When Goblin was wounded in the ensuing conflict, Laura quickly sent her back to Live World for her own safety. However, Wild Child then turned his attention towards Laura, badly injuring her before finally being apprehended by another former Flight member, Wolverine. Vindicator intended on turning Wild Child over to the authorities for this and other crimes, but he was swiftly rescued by Nemesis, who refused to abandon one of her teammates. That situation came to a head when Vindicator and Wolverine teamed up to confront the rogue members of Gamma Flight, leading to another battle. In the end, Nemesis and Wild Child escaped once again, while the other members of Gamma Flight quit the team, with Silver and Auric returning to China, and Witchfire agreeing to join Alpha Flight as a trainee. While all of that was going down, Shaman, Sasquatch, Aurora, and Talisman were investigating Puck's disappearance. Their search eventually led them to the Master of the World's underwater complex, where they discovered that the mad villain had been experimenting on Puck using bio-restructuring enzymes from the now-deceased supervillain Lionel Jeffries, aka Scramble, as well as an old DNA sample from Puck himself, from when his body was in its previous dwarf-like state. These experiments left him physically deformed and racked with pain from the enzyme's attempts to reshape his flesh. To spare him from this, Sasquatch used his own scientific prowess to stabilize and complete Puck's transformation, which permanently reverted him to his dwarven form, but also condensed his muscles, endowing him with superhuman physiology. The Master also used Scramble's enzymes to create an army of misshapen clones, but these remnant men, as they were called, were ultimately defeated by Talisman, who transformed them back into regular humans. To accomplish this, Talisman searched through her father's mystical medicine pouch for a spell capable of doing the job, and while she succeeded, the strain of this effort overwhelmed her mind, nearly destroying it. However, the Master himself escaped and subsequently used what he learned from his experimentation to restructure his own body, enhancing his strength and ridding himself of his own previous disfigurements. Now for the next part of our story, let's introduce yet another character, a man named Colin Ashworth Hume. Born in Toronto, Ontario, Colin was the son of a black Canadian woman named Jacqueline Freeman Hume and her husband, British diplomat Franklin Hume. When he was only 4 years old, Colin witnessed a violent street fight which both frightened and fascinated him. However, his maternal grandfather, Martin Freeman, made Colin swear to never raise his own fist in anger or hatred. Now, while Martin loved his grandson, he wasn't particularly fond of Franklin Hume, and vocally opposed the idea when Jacqueline decided to take Colin and move to England about a year later. Growing up there, Colin developed a thick local accent, but then when he was 14, he was attacked by a pair of street toughs. Colin defended himself and in doing so discovered his own superhuman abilities when he swung a mostly empty duffel bag which struck with the weight and force of a solid object. As it turns out, Colin Hume was a mutant with the power to affect the air molecules around him, including their weight and density, allowing him to create and manipulate blocks of what he called hard air. However, in this encounter where he discovered this ability, he also went further than he needed to in fending off his attackers. Disturbed by his own actions, he kept his mutant nature a secret as he focused on his schooling and athletic pursuits. So much so that when his grandfather later passed away and his parents returned to Canada for the funeral, Colin elected to stay in England. He eventually started working for a UK branch of the Roxxon Corporation, who learned of his mutant nature and provided him with a specialized armored suit designed to help him channel and control his abilities, as well as the codename Windshear. Meanwhile, in the United States, Roxxon stored the comatose cyborg body of James MacDonald Hudson in a Colorado research facility, but while there he subconsciously began hacking into the base's computer systems. When this caused machines and defense systems to begin going haywire, the facility's coordinator, Samuel Higgins, had Windshear flown over from Europe, but even he was unable to get close to the source of the problem alone and insisted on bringing in additional help. By pulling strings with the Canadian government, Higgins had Madison Jeffries assigned to deal with the problem, who soon arrived with Diamond Lil in tow. After enlisting further aid from the Native American mutant Forge, Madison, Lil, and Windshear discovered the source of the facility's malfunctions and ultimately rescued James MacDonald Hudson from Roxxon's corporate grasp. Disgusted by the company's actions, Windshear left Roxxon and returned to Canada with Jeffries and Lil. Mac and Heather were thus reunited. However, this was initially bittersweet, as Mac's experiences and new cyborg body had left him more robotic and seemingly emotionless. In the wake of their reunion, Heather continued to lead Alpha Flight, taking the codename Guardian, while Mac rejoined the team, reclaiming his old identity of Vindicator. Behind the scenes, Mac's old military liaison, General Jeremy Clark, attempted to have him resume control of the team. Having been lied to and manipulated by Clark in the past, Mac warned Heather about the General's machinations, and while he knew that she didn't need him to protect her anymore, he confessed that he needed her, and the two resumed their relationship. By this point, Heather and Madison had drifted apart, and Madison eventually got back together with Lil anyway. In any event, Mac's return heralded a new era for Alpha Flight, which included Guardian, Sasquatch, Aurora, North Star, Windshear, Diamond, Lil, Vindicator, Box, Shaman, Talisman, Puck, Persuasion, and Witchfire. Laura Dean was still comatose at the time, having been hospitalized in the wake of her encounter with Wildchild. However, her parents came forward and put aside their anti-mutant bigotry to give much-needed blood and to save their daughter's life. Of course, Heather was hesitant to remand her back into their custody and petitioned to have Alpha Flight become Laura's legal guardians. Talisman, meanwhile, underwent physical therapy while her mind recovered from her own prior battle. In the midst of all of this, Aurora attempted to come to terms with her past and reconcile the conflicting aspects of her personality, which previously manifested in the form of dissociative identity disorder. She tried different outfits, including a hooded costume that paid homage to her ties with the Catholic Church, as well as an ensemble that represented her more outgoing and rebellious side. Her powers also continued to evolve, allowing her to radiate a form of luminescent energy that brought inner peace to those who basked in it. After an encounter with a telepathic villain known as Headlock, she even gained the ability to transform into a being of pure light, and ultimately decided that she wanted to devote herself to spiritual healing and the rehabilitation of wayward souls. Fortunately for her, with so many members, this incarnation of the Flight was divided into 3 categories: Alpha for the primary team of field operatives, Beta for trainees, and Gamma for support staff, with some members assigned to more than one division. Alpha Flight included Guardian, Vindicator, Sasquatch, North Star, Diamond Lil, Box, and Windshear. Beta Flight included Persuasion, Witchfire, and, until she fully recovered, Talisman. This division was overseen by Shaman, who took on the role of a teacher and mentor. Gamma Flight was mostly composed of individuals from other divisions with different areas of expertise. Vindicator had engineering sciences, Sasquatch had biotech R&D, Aurora provided psychiatric counseling services, Madison Jeffries had his mechanical expertise, and Shaman provided medical. Gamma Flight also included a division for supernatural sciences which Shaman was in charge of, and included both Witchfire and Talisman. In the midst of all of this restructuring, Diamond Lil found a concerning lump in her breast, but her impenetrable skin made it impossible for doctors to perform a biopsy. Despite this, she elected to devote herself to the team for as long as she could. Meanwhile, there was an incident in which the genetically engineered woman known simply as Her, who for all intents and purposes was Adam Warlock's genetic twin, defended the denizens of the planet Usurpria from the intergalactic business conglomerate known as the Consortium. To show their respect and reverence, the Usurprians gave Her the name Juridia Starduster, but when the Consortium's forces proved too much for her to handle alone, Juridia fled to Earth in search of aid, ultimately landing in Toronto instead of her intended New York. The Consortium followed and launched an attack on the city, and while they were opposed by both Alpha Flight and the Avengers, the sheer number of invaders proved difficult to deal with. The various aliens involved in this assault were directed by a Consortium mothership, a vessel so large that it used energy from living planets as a power source. In the midst of all of this, Laura Dean awakened from her coma and immediately transported herself, her parents, and the Beta Flight trainees to Live World to find her sister. Complicating matters further, at the height of the battle with the Consortium, when Juridia was prepared to surrender herself to end it, she was suddenly teleported away along with some of the more powerful Alphans and Avengers. The ones responsible for that disappearance were actually the Quirlin, the alien race that had previously transformed James Hudson into a cyborg. As it turns out, the planet Quirl was being targeted by the World Eater Galactus, and by seizing control of Mac's biomechanical components to bring them there, the Quirlin hoped that the Alphans and Avengers could save them. In the end, Alpha Flight saved both Quirl and Earth in one fell swoop by combining the electromagnetic abilities of Guardian and Vindicator's battlesuits with Quirlin technology to forcibly bring the Consortium mothership to their present location, allowing Galactus to feed on that instead. However, Mac seemingly sacrificed his own life to accomplish this, shaking off the influence of his cybernetics long enough to tell Heather that he loved her before disappearing again. In truth, Mac actually dropped into an interdimensional null space and was later found and captured by the Master, who began the process of both healing and brainwashing him. Now, one good thing to come from this whole conflict is that during the battle with the Consortium, Diamond Lil encountered an alien from the planet Xanth who wielded a weapon capable of piercing her skin, and while she had to kill him to take it, this technology subsequently allowed the former Beta Flight member, Dr. Whitman Knapp, to examine her cyst and thankfully determine that it was benign. Turning our attention back to Nemesis and Wildchild, after their previous battle with Heather and Wolverine, Nemesis helped her mutant companion suppress his homicidal urges. We discussed Wildchild's origins all the way back in our first Alpha Flight video, but it's important to remember that he wasn't always dangerously feral. At one time, he was simply a homeless mutant with enhanced physiology named Kyle Gibney. It wasn't until he was abducted and experimented on by the subversive Secret Empire that he became the savage and animalistic Wildchild. During their time together, Kyle and Nemesis battled a stone-fisted mutant named Damon Matthias, better known as Rock, who seized control of a group of sewer-dwelling youths called the Children of Night. Sometime after that conflict, however, Kyle returned to government custody, and Canada's Department K used a combination of drugs and therapy to calm his mind and undo much of what the secret empire had done to him, allowing him to retain his animalistic abilities, but without the feral urges. As a result, he became a masked operative codenamed Weapon Omega, and was subsequently assigned to join Alpha Flight. In his debut outing, he helped the team defeat the ancient alchemist Esteban Diablo, but during this mission Madison Jeffries was injured and nearly killed. He did make a full recovery, but in the wake of their recent scares, he and Lil decided to retire from active duty and settle down and get married. Meanwhile, there was an incident in which Aurora was captured by the sadistic telepath Headlock, who spent several weeks mentally torturing her with her past traumas. This, however, caused her dissociative identity disorder to resurface. As it turns out, since their encounter with Loki, the Jean-Marie persona was content to remain dormant within her own mind, while her more proactive Aurora personality used their mutant abilities to help people. With the balance between them unmoored by Headlock's mental tampering, Jean-Marie returned and used Aurora's powers to defeat the villain, but in doing so completely exhausted her light's ability to heal people. In the wake of this, Jean-Marie rejoined her brother as an active member of Alpha Flight, and the team donned new matching uniforms. Having made peace with one another, the two sides of her personality found a new sort of balance, and voluntarily swapped between Jean-Marie and Aurora depending on the situation. After that, there was a tragic incident in which Northstar found a newborn baby girl seemingly abandoned in the trash. Taking the child to a hospital, he learned that she had been born with AIDS. The girl's mother was apparently a homeless woman who passed away shortly after giving birth, and Northstar decided to adopt the baby, naming her Joanne Bobier. This story was covered by the news media over the following weeks, and Joanne was referred to as the unofficial youngest member of Alpha Flight. Meanwhile, a retired superhero known as Major Mapleleaf, real name Louis Sadler, was still mourning the death of his son Michael, who was also a victim of AIDS. Overwhelmed by the news cycle and resentful over the fact that his own child was treated as little more than a statistic simply for being gay, Sadler went on a grief-fueled rampage until he was stopped by Northstar, who helped the elder hero come to terms with his loss. Sadler soon returned the favor, providing some measure of comfort when little Joanne Bobier passed away after only a few short weeks of life. The following day, Northstar held a press conference to publicly come out as gay himself and vowed to use his celebrity status to promote education and prevention of HIV and AIDS. It wasn't until after that that the Deans and Beta Flight finally returned from their adventure in Live World, leaping through one of Laura's interdimensional portals while Windshear used his hard air abilities to prevent the Dream Queen's demons from following. After that, the members of Beta Flight were granted their own uniforms, and Dr. William Knapp officially rejoined the group as Mannequin. Laura Dean, meanwhile, finally got her own codename and officially became known as Pathway. At the same time, the Master of the World sought to strike back at his foes by assembling his own team of superhumans, forming a new incarnation of Omega Flight. But for the culmination of his schemes, we'll have to come back another day because that's all the time we have for this week. So if you want to know what's next for Alpha Flight, well, let me know in the comments, and make sure to vote for it in next month's patron poll. In the meantime, that's all I have for you this week, but thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it on your favorite social media. As always, the issues referenced in this video are listed in the description below if you would like to read them for yourself, as well as links to other places you can find me. Let me give a special shout out to my Patreon supporters, Twitch subscribers, and YouTube members who help make the channel possible. By signing up for any ongoing amount on any of these platforms, you'll get your name in the special thanks here, but if you have to pick one, Patreon is the one that helps determine what topics get covered on the channel via monthly polls. And of course, I always need topics for people to vote on, so if there's anything in particular that you want me to talk about, be sure to let me know in the comments. But that is indeed all I have for you this week, and so until next time, true believers, happy holidays, happy new year, and Excelsior!